So, but the WASSCE MP, he actually posed the question, is unhappy with the minister's response. He argues that successive governments have failed to properly think through the implementation of this particular new curriculum also. He believes that basic education will take a nosedive should government fail to address this situation.
As we always say, it's the bedrock to development. So if you play with the education of the youth, what it means is that you are creating a very dangerous future for the country. The question was simple. How do you introduce a new curriculum without textbooks? And I asked a very simple question as a follow-up. Mr. Minister, what do you think the impact will be on quality of education if teachers will have to be teaching for 2 good years without reference material, traditional reference material like textbooks? The answer was that they've not done any official impact assessment. Right. And if it is done, we will get the results on the floor of Parliament. But the truth also remains that for 2 good years without the textbooks, everybody, it's common sense, that the impact on the quality of the student will definitely not be the best.
It won't be the best?
It will not be the best.
But the minister says even though they are yet to do the impact assessment, teachers have been given the needed resource packages to execute the learning activities in the various schools.
You are talking to all of us who have been to school before. It doesn't matter what you've given to the teacher. The student also uses the textbook as a reference material. Where are the textbooks? And as we are even speaking, he's still giving us assurances. Somewhere in June 2021, he gave us 3-month ultimatum that the textbooks were going to be ready. We are in December now. There are no textbooks. And now he's afraid to give us deadlines. What he's saying is that he's assuring us that very soon. They are at the quality assurance stage. Nobody knows when the textbooks will be ready. And in fact, the students are frustrated. The teachers are frustrated. The system itself is frustrated. We only pray that the assurance is given now can be taken seriously.
You said they are frustrated. Have you done your own assessment to know that?
Look, I have brothers who are teachers. I have sisters who are teachers. And they'll tell you, teaching without a textbook. And the minister is saying that we're giving them some starter packs to be able to use. Teaching without a traditional reference material like the textbook is quite frustrating to any teacher. I've been in the classroom before. And it doesn't matter what you have as a learning tool, as a teaching and learning material. When you get back home, you need to do some references using this textbook to put yourself in the standard that you can get into the class and believe that you are producing students for a better Ghana tomorrow.
So for you, the absence of this curriculum for about 2 years, as you talk about, what in your view do you think is really impacted on the education?
I think that introducing a new curriculum before thinking about what textbook to use is actually walking with your head down.
Well, so that's the interaction my colleague Kwesi Parker-Wilson had there with the WASSCE MP, and that discussion continues in Parliament. And my colleague Kwesi Parker-Wilson joins me on the phone with further details on what transpired in Parliament. So, Parker, we know amongst others that the issue about the curriculum and, of course, the just ended West Africa Senior Certificate Examination results came up tops. We'll talk about it in detail, but first, what are the other issues that came up that the minister had to respond to?
Largely, the MPs were focused on the new curriculum and, of course, the absence of the textbooks. And the point was made clearly in the chamber that government has disappointed the basic schools. In fact, some few weeks ago, we saw that some teachers across the country were even agitating over the absence of the textbooks. Now, these textbooks are the primary document for teachers to facilitate the learning activities across the country. And so if these textbooks are not available, then what it means is that they will have an adverse effect on our education. So largely the concern in the chamber today was about the textbooks, and the minister indicating to us that procurements are still ongoing. In fact, it's been about 3 years they started doing the procurement. They've not ended yet, but he assured the House that the procurement will be done soon, and then distribution will equally be given to the various schools across the country. So that has been the major concern. Of course, I must say there were issues about libraries as well. He indicated that government has plans to put up more libraries. Already some have been done, but then they want to put up more to help the students improve upon their reading skills going forward.
Okay, well, now let's talk about the probe that we are likely to commission into the West Africa Senior Certificate Examination recent results and the failures. It appears is of concern to the MPs as well. Tell us about the details.
Well, so, you know that since the release of the WASSCE results, there are concerns about the abysmal performance of the candidates, particularly for maths and science. Well, the minister has indicated to us that even though he agreed that there was a bit of a failure, not much of a failure, but it was just about maths and science that was a dip. But if you look at the average, these are students who were writing an exam in an era of the pandemic, with all the long breaks together with the pandemic and the fear. They managed to put their heads together. They managed to go to their books and still write for the exam. So there should be some commendation for the students who were going through that stress within that period. However, he admits that for math and science, they are critical subjects that should not be a failure for any of the students. And so for him, the government will look into it, why some students failed, why others passed, and ensure that there is some level of equality and equity among all the schools. So the minister himself has assured the House, and of course journalists here, when he held the press conference, that in the coming days there will be a probe into the performance of the WASSCE student. Now, this probe essentially would look at the pros and cons and also improve upon subsequent examination going forward.
Okay, so one other topical issue on the education front is the one teacher, one laptop policy and the concerns that have been raised by these teachers. Did that even come up at all? I'm sure in your interaction.
Didn't come up at all. In fact, what came up was the 1.5 billion Ghana cedis Get Fund is drawing, and this question was actually in the name of the Member of Parliament for Adaklu, Kwame Abuja, and thankfully he was just passing by. I've just gotten him. Let me just, Honorable, you asked the question. First of all, why the need for this question?
Yeah, well, you know that education infrastructure has been a very big issue in the country.
Right.
And a lot of projects were awarded in the past for which contractors ought to be paid. So this House approved a facility for Get Fund to borrow up to $1.5 billion to be able to clear the arrears. When I asked the question, the expectation I had was that we'll get a breakdown of which contractors were paid, because as I speak to you, there were contractors who actually executed work since 2016 who are still complaining that they have not been paid. If you see the answer the minister provided, he basically said that about 800 million Ghana cedi was spent to pay for old projects, and about 1 billion Ghana cedi was spent to buy vehicles and new projects. So in effect, that does not address the issue why we gave them the opportunity to spend the 1.5 billion Ghana cedi, because we're supposed to clear the arrears before we start new things. But his answer basically suggests that he spent the largest portion of the money to do their own things and then ignoring. So today, even these answers don't give a good respite to the contractors who have finished school blocks that are being used and are not being paid. And I'm not happy at all about that.
So now that you're not happy, even though he's provided answers about procuring some cars for their officials and all of that, what is the next round of action? Because they are not happy with the answer.
The answer is very deficient, because I requested the list of those who have been paid. He didn't provide the list. So I'm going to ask the question again.
And this money specifically was for to pay the contractors.
Yes, exactly. The issue was about contractors who have already executed work and have not been paid. So if we give you the opportunity to raise the money and you went ahead to actually use the money to do new things and ignore the people for which we've raised the money, that is actually in breach of what we have given you the opportunity to raise the money.
I see. So you're going to call the minister back before the House to re-answer the question?
Exactly. And get to provide details. Because if I were to just go to him and say, give me these details, he may not be able to do that. I will ask the question again. He has to come back to the floor to give us details about each contractor, who has been paid and how much has been paid and for which project. That is the only way that we can identify whether indeed the contractors he claimed have been paid. Because I know for sure that many contractors who are still complaining about not being paid for work completed and in use by government.
Thank you very much. And so, MF, that's the Member of Parliament for Adaklu there, who is clearly unsatisfied with the answers provided by by the minister with regards to some 1.5 billion approved by Parliament to pay contractors who executed their fund project.
Happened in Parliament as the House prepares to break for Christmas. We know there are issues about the budget and approval of appropriations, amongst others. Did that even happen? What are the other things happening in Parliament?
Well, I must say that we do not have a lot of the members in the chamber today. Sorry. And I must say that if any member had raised the issue of quorum, I'm sure Parliament have been forced to adjourn sitting or perhaps suspend sitting for some time to allow the MPs get into the chamber to continue with the business of the day. Now, this is so because most of the MPs are at the committee level considering the budget estimate. And in fact, we are told that hopefully by next week, Monday, they should be able to complete the report. Of course, the clerk on the committee would have to put a report together and on Tuesday submit it to the floor of the House. So even on Saturday and on Sunday, some of the committees will still be sitting to consider the budget estimate. What I can tell you is that the Finance Committee, as I speak to you, is just rounding up. We are told that hopefully by tomorrow they will round up with the budget estimate and put together their report. So next week we will receive the report from the Finance Committee with regards to the budget estimate. So in the chamber, it's been about questions and questions, asking the sector ministers to provide answers to some questions that the MPs want to know. There was a concern about boreholes in the Upper West region, where we are told by the minority that it's not sufficient. And of course, we are going to the January where there will be drought within the area. So if there are no provisions for boreholes, it's going to affect farming activity and other economic activities within the area. So the minister came to the House to provide some answers to it, indicating that government is still within the processes of completing some of the boreholes earmarked for some of these areas. So largely in the chamber, the sector ministers have been called before the House to answer questions from the MPs.
Okay.
And let me just say that just before I went from the chamber, there is this conversation about the fight against corruption. The whole West MP, Emmanuel Bedra, read a statement today indicating that we are marking Anti-Corruption and Transparency Day today. And in his statement, he pointed out that it appears there seems to be a dip in the fight against corruption under the Akufo-Addo administration, and urged the administration to do more towards the fight against corruption. Madam Esla Owusu-Ekofo, being the MP for Abletuma West constituency and also a minister, indicated to the House that it is the reason government has put together the digitalization agenda, where they are using the new technology to fight corruption. So it's going to take away the human element from most of the things that we do as a nation, and then that will cut down on corruption. So it is never true that government is not really doing much in the fight against corruption.
Okay, that's the parliamentary correspondent Kwesi Parker-Wilson there, taking us through proceedings in Parliament today.